Welcome to the Inside Out Money Podcast.
Can't even recognize this place. Too many pieces of our past mistakes.
Hi, I'm Maggie, and I believe real change starts from the inside out. So let's work together to improve our money and our lives from the inside out. We will explore all things money and our relationship with it. Join me each week with a rotating set of co-hosts, friends, and interviews. Let's jump in.
It's time, we going round and round and round and round.
Hi, Erica.
Hi, Maggie.
How are you?
I'm a little tired, but I'm good. How are you?
Good. I think we're both super tired. And I was trying to think of how that segues into this topic, but stay tuned because there is a connection. Okay, first off, if you're new to the show, hi, welcome to Inside Out Money. This is a personal finance podcast focused on redefining wealth from the inside out. Each week, I speak with a rotating set of co-hosts about a different financial topic, trying to help you improve your financial mindset and tactics. This week, in this episode, we've got co-host Erica here, and we are going to be talking about the full range of everything from predatory sales tactics to straight up scams and how you and your family members can help spot and avoid them. And my connection to us both being very tired and just a little like busy and stressed and just normal things is that when you get into those phases of life, which are very normal for people like us with, I was going to say like busy careers, but you with busy careers and us both with children and just busy active lives, you don't always have all of the energy and senses about you to recognize and catch and be very conscious and intentional about all of these things that are happening around us that we do need to pay attention to.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this topic because you've kind of addressed some things and episodes, the common example was like the end caps at Target. Oh, this is a really good deal. And that's by design, And so these are the things that we think as consumers that people are trying to help us out, but they're not. They're always trying to make a buck off of us. And we need to be aware of that so that we can save our money. If you need something, that's fine. If it's a need, that's fine. But we can and do fall victim to these tactics. And so I'm excited about learning about them so I can know I know how to spot them when I'm shopping or just receiving, a ton of emails in my inbox marketing this or that. This time only, get this before this goes away. It's like it invokes in us some sense of emotion of, well, I have to have it now. It's like, well, why?
Yeah,
why now? You didn't have to have it 10 minutes ago before you saw that email.
Yeah, that's called marketing. So these tactics are getting more and more aggressive over time. Like the more technology has become pervasive in our lives, I think they're getting even more aggressive because of that. And one of the things, you just mentioned briefly, Erica, was just your finances, right? Not spending as much money. But this in general, part of this is about protecting your spend. And then a lot of it's about protecting your savings, right? And a lot of the things that we're going to be talking about actually go after money that you have saved and invested and you think you're doing something good with that's a future investment, but it's not. It's a scam. It's unethical. There's a whole range of things we'll talk through. But getting more aware of these things is to help protect your finances because no one else is going to do the protection for you, right? You've got to spot this stuff and catch it. And then I'd also say just for everybody who's got aging parents or any parents, whether you think they're older or not, you being more aware of these to help them also is incredibly important because so many of the things we'll talk about as you get older, you're even more susceptible to for various reasons. It's really important, I think, for us and our families to be more aware of these things. So we're going to kind of start from like small to big. This is not a perfect or exhaustive listing, and it's not perfectly in order, but they somewhat range from what I would call the least offensive to the most or the least offensive and illegal to the most offensive and illegal. And the first one is just marketing, right? So you talked about the end caps at Target, Erica, right? Everything from why they put milk and bread in the back of the grocery store, it's so that you'll walk through the rest of the store and buy all sorts of other stuff on your way. That's not unethical. That's marketing. That's designed to make you shop more. I'm not sure I would call it predatory. Again, it is literally like the definition of marketing. And same thing on like, the specials that are on end caps at Target or wherever you're at. The specials at restaurants sometimes are related to food that they have in excess that they need to get rid of. So sometimes the special at a restaurant is because the chef's really excited about some new salmon dish. And sometimes it's because they have a surplus of salmon and they need to push the salmon before it goes bad and is no longer, able to be served.
That's an interesting one because I always assume it's like, well, this is a special because they're trying to make more money off of it. But it's like, was this yesterday's salmon? Is this salmonella salmon?
Yeah, no, they don't call it that for sure. And it's not that it's bad, but it might be just like in my own house when the yogurts are going bad. I'm like pushing the yogurts with the kids, right? They're not bad yet, but in a week they're going to be. So I need you to hurry up and eat them, right? And so again,
so hold on, let's stop. You're using marketing tactics on your kids.
Oh, for sure. All day long.
Well, I respect
it's a
that.
marketing or it's an anti-marketing. I mean, I'm trying to help them. I'm trying to help them though, you know?
Yeah.
Just like every marketer is trying to do for every consumer. Erica, you recently sent me a passage from a book you were reading that I really liked and I want you to read because it reminded me of the origins of advertising and marketing, right? And I am for reference, I was an advertising major in college. I worked in marketing in my whole career for 20 years, mostly in the marketing field. And so this is what I did, what I know. But even reading this, when Erica sent it to me, she was like, have you seen this before? And I was like, I remember roughly like studying this in school, but I hadn't seen it in a really long time. But I just think it's really interesting to start this discussion on working our way up the list into more predatory tactics.
Yeah, so this was really interesting. I'm reading a book right now called Finance for the People by, and I hope I don't butcher this person's name, Paco de Leon, who was a financial advisor and wasn't making any money herself, advising people who have tons of money. So she wrote a book and went out on her own. And it's the one finance book that I've read so far that really resonates with me of like, okay, this makes sense. These are practical steps. But she went into the origin story of these marketing tactics and I'm just going to read the whole passage because it's all so interesting and eye-opening. So Edward Bernays, who is Freud's nephew, was the first person to use Freud's ideas about humanity to manipulate the masses through what we know as modern marketing and advertising. He got his start during World War I using media to help the Woodrow Wilson administration promote the U.S. war effort at home and abroad. After attending the peace conference at the end of the war, Bernays saw firsthand how effective propaganda was and wondered how it might be used to control and manipulate the masses during peacetime. When he got back to Americas, he established a company that would create propaganda, which he renamed as Public Relations. Bernays, using his uncle's insights, developed an approach he named engineering consent. It was based on the idea that it's possible to manipulate people through their unconscious, irrational emotions and influence them to behave in a certain way. He sold the means to control and regiment the masses according to our will without their knowing about it. And that part was in quotes. Bernays thought that irrelevant objects could create symbols for how you want people to see you, that it was possible to get people to act irrationally if you link products to their emotional desires and feelings. Prior to the large-scale adoption of this kind of advertising, most forms of marketing were focused on the practicality of the product's features. Bernays' approach appealed not to what you need, but what you unconsciously desire. It's not that you think you need that new piece of clothing, it's that you'll feel better with that new piece of clothing. So the words that stand out to me are manipulate the masses and unconscious, irrational.
Without knowing about it.
Without knowing about it. Using Freud, who's like the father of all unconscious behavior, to manipulate the masses at a very vulnerable time. Actually, peacetime is less vulnerable, but using what he had learned during wartime to manipulate the masses into believing they need things to feel better.
They said manipulate like 4 times during that. And then at one point used the term engineering consent, which I thought was just a fascinating term. And then said not what you need. Like very clearly, we know they talked about shifting from the benefits of a product to, again, getting into manipulation and engineering consent. And it is, I think it's so important to understand where this comes from. And that's such a powerful summary of it, because the more you're aware of that, the more you're able to combat it and just be more intentional and aware, right? And don't let them manipulate you. We're all susceptible to this, right? Erica, you and I talk about this a lot, particularly in the types of episodes we do on this podcast, but we can be better at it by being more aware of it and, less susceptible to the manipulation.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that we all want to do or be in at the end of the day is in control of our own finances. And this is This is a way for us to be in control of not reacting or responding to these tactics so that at the end of the day, our bank accounts are staying at status quo.
Yeah, and I like to use knowledge like this to like get me a little bit like fired up or like not angry, but motivated to say, hey, I'm not going to let them manipulate me, right? And I'm not going to let them engineer my consent. I have free will and I will make my own decisions. And so I hope, this background and kind of origin is helpful for people. Because again, that's the bottom level. We're going to work our way up to, more predatory tactics. The next step I would say is unwanted upselling. So this is the idea of like pushing unnecessary add-ons or upgrades to maximize how much you're getting from a sale. A big one I think about here is, you go into a car dealership and you want to buy a car and you know the price of the car and they're trying to add on like all of these different things that you questionably need, including service plans and all of these other things. Oil change places are famous for this. You go in to get an oil change. It's supposed to be, $30. They're telling you need 20 other things, and often you don't. Sometimes you do, but there's a big upcharge for these things. It's not necessarily the most cost-effective place to get those services done. And usually they're telling you need things earlier than you actually do. Some places are honest, but a lot of them are really trained and incentivized to promote a lot of upselling.
So back to the restaurant example you gave earlier, I waited tables in college and we were taught how to upsell sides or sauces or just anything. Oh, do you want this? And you're not telling them that it actually costs money.
That there's an upcharge. Yeah.
Yeah, that there's an upcharge. It was a tactic. And I felt guilty doing it. It was like, oh, you want this sauce? Oh, it sounds great. Okay, well, it's $2.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's interesting. I now sometimes will ask, and sometimes I feel almost a little embarrassed to ask, like, oh, is that free? I'll take it if it's free, but I don't really want it if it's not. I don't want it that. Sometimes I want it, but sometimes I don't. And yeah, it's interesting that, many of the people in front of you, again, are trained to do this and they're incentivized, right? So, they make more money. A lot of people are working on commission in different fields. A level above that, I'd say, is marketing that is just completely dishonest. So keep in mind that when you read reviews about a product, they could be fake. There could be fake testimonials or reviews. It's quite common. It's hard to regulate. There could be misleading claims about a product. You can make complaints about it, but it's hard to track it down. And the average consumer isn't going to be like, I don't think that's real, right? And remember when you're reading reviews, if they're reviews on a company's website, they're almost impossible to regulate. And they could be filtering out bad reviews. They could be doing all sorts of unethical / illegal things. And when they're reviews on a third-party website, so like when you read a review on a hotel at TripAdvisor, right? You know that TripAdvisor has no incentive in that. They don't sell a hotel. They don't actually own a hotel, right? They just are an intermediary between hotels. And so they've got unbiased reviews most of the time, though there still could be hotels paying consumers to go leave reviews on TripAdvisor. So, I mean, just read between the lines on things of like, always know that not everything you read is going to be honest. There are dishonest things out there, but it's especially questionable when you're on an actual website. Now, I will say this isn't always true, but like working for a big hotel company, as an example, when you like a big trusted reputable brand, like they're not filtering out reviews. They have to filter out reviews for like inappropriate content and curse words and things like that, but they're not filtering out bad reviews. That is highly unethical. I think it's actually illegal in many ways. And big reputable companies, I've not ever seen doing that. And I've worked at many of them and consulted with many of them. Smaller companies, there's not a lot of people looking and regulating them. And so, when you're dealing with a smaller course, and we'll talk about different things, and you're reading testimonials about it, you have no idea if they're real. So just take things with a grain of salt when you see that and realize there's a lot of marketing out there that is just 100% dishonest and lying.
So here's a question about reviews. I often see a review where someone's like, oh, I loved it. I just got it. I haven't used it yet, but I received this product for free in exchange for the review. And I'll see that on many. I'm like, well, how that's called bribery, right? Like, I mean, maybe not in the marketing world, but
yeah, look, and I don't know all of the laws against this, but they're being transparent, right? They're saying, and you're supposed to disclose usually if you got a product for free. And they've said, everything you just said, they were very transparent. So I wouldn't read anything into that review because you don't even know what they think of it yet. But yes, that is a common tactic to give away a product in order to get a review for it. And it often could be a biased review, right? And so that's why I say, like, my approach for this, and we'll get into some tactics at the end of this episode, we're going to talk about tactics. But my approach with that is I buy things from reputable companies with good return policies and guarantees. So if a company doesn't have something like that, it's a huge red flag to me. And we'll talk more about some red flags when we get into tactics for how to avoid these scams and how to watch out for stuff like this. But look, the first step is be aware of all these things, which is why we're going through them all. And we'll finish with some more tactics at the end. So another one that drives me crazy, and I have been in so many situations like this, Erica, I'm curious if you have also been yourself, is what I would call high pressure sales tactics. So a very common one, and this tends to be with higher price stuff, and I'll give some examples here, but is you go through a whole sales pitch on something, and often they want to make sure all the decision makers are in the room up front. That's a big warning sign that this is going to happen. But you might get invited to a free webinar about something. You might attend something about a timeshare when you're on vacation, right? There's some hook that's free. There's a lot of data and testimonials and things thrown at you of why this thing is so awesome. And then at the end, there's a very big push to commit right now. That is a high pressure sales tactic. And sometimes it's commit right now for a very, very big discount. Sometimes that's it. They imply that like the only way you can do this is if you commit now. And my view on this is like, look, I understand from the marketing side, the more time you spend selling a product, that's your time that goes into it. And you need to recoup that time in the product. So you want the sales process to be as fast as possible. I get it. So it makes sense to offer some discount if you're going to commit now versus later. But often the ones that are very high pressure, I just immediately have my spidey sense up. So I remember one time doing this. I'm not going to name who this is, but I had gotten targeted for a bunch of content about like, are you stressed out? Are you overwhelmed at work? Like and I was like, yes. This was like 5 or 8 years ago, maybe. And I went to a like one-on-one intro session with kind of like a coach of sorts. And at the end, and I remember her even like pushing to have my husband there. And I was like, why do I need my husband there? That feels weird, but whatever. And I didn't, because I was like, I make my own decisions and this is my money. And it was an $8,000 commitment if I signed up today, or like $13,000 if I signed up literally like 2 hours later. That to me is a huge, like, they are trying to lure you in with high pressure, sign up now and you can't get out. A friend of mine just told me this about something with someone was selling like an awning at their house. Same thing, like high pressure, you sign up now, you get this massive discount. I had someone do it to me with gutters once. Timeshares often take an approach like this. I hate it. It drives me crazy. If you have a good product, again, a small discount, if you happen to be like willing to commit today, fine. But a massive price difference between now and 2 hours from now, that's a big red flag to me. I don't like it. It's kind of dirty.
What's the flip of that? What happens if someone is approaching you, someone's saying, sign up for this course, it's $8,000 now, or 7 minutes later, it's going to be $13,000. What does the person marketing to you do if you say, okay, well, I'm not going to make the decision right now? They just expect you. What happens if you balk?
Yeah, I do it every time because I'm like their worst nightmare. Or I'm not their worst nightmare, but you know what I mean? Like I'm not their best client.
You're not their
right?
target audience because you won't fall for it.
They're annoyed when they hit someone like me. Yeah. You should see me and like Greg in a timeshare situation. Greg's just like laughing at me. Like you guys just let her out of here. Like this is no good for anyone. Yeah, that's a good question. So, I mean, sometimes they continue to have like some additional offers. It's like when you go to cancel something online and sometimes they'll be like, sometimes you go cancel Audible even. They're like, oh, do you want to stay for $6.95 a month for 3 months? They kind of give you a trial offer. So they may lower the price a little bit. But most of the time they walk away because that's part of their high pressure is they're holding on tight, right? And they're not going to back down. And that is their tactic and their approach.
That to me is like a form of corporate bullying. Like it's actually really gross to me. And I don't have an example of this happening to me, but what came up in my recent memory is some friends were getting a quote for some new windows in a house they had just moved into. And it's a lot of windows. So it was like, I can't remember the number.
It could be like, $40,000 or $50,000. I don't know where you are.
They were quoted at like $120,000.
Oh, wow.
So they got the quote and then the husband was home talking to the window salesman. And he said, well, when's your wife going to be home? And he's like, I don't know. What does this have to do with her? And he's like, well, I really want you both here. Like you just said, that's a tactic. And waited. And my friend knew he wasn't going to pay this amount of money. This was the first place they had gotten the quote from. It seemed crazy high. It might have even been something like $160,000. The salesman insisted on waiting until his wife got home. And then she got the quote and was like, well, this is something we're going to have to discuss. We're not going to,
That's the
just
right
make
answer.
this decision right now. She had just walked in the door from work, and she's got this random person standing in her house trying to like put her on the spot to make a high financial decision that she wasn't even aware was happening. And the guy got really frustrated, like, well, I spent my time here, and the husband's kind of like, well, I wanted you to leave hours ago. You insisted on waiting until my wife got home.
Yeah. They'll use guilt in it. Just all sorts of, they're trying to tell you like, oh, everybody else commits. Like we just signed 5 people in your neighborhood. Like we're the best product. Like you don't, and they show you all this information. Like take your time. A good trusted product does not, this is 100% true. Okay. A good trusted reputable product does not have to use high pressure sales tactics. I'm not saying there aren't some that do, but they don't have to. And most of them don't. So I've also, on the flip side, I've had vendors selling home related upgrade products, which is a very common tactic in that. And they've been very good and been like, oh, totally understand. This is a big decision. Take your time. Think about it. Right. That is a tactic. That's also a bit of a sales tactic on it. I mean, they're playing a different game there, but that is a confidence approach. Right. And I like that. And I am much more willing to work with and talk to a company like that. If there's a high pressure sales tactic, Greg will see me. Like we had someone trying to sell us like gutter guards a few years ago. And he'll see me. The second I realize that's what they're doing, I'm like, I'm out. I've shut down. I don't even believe you or trust you anymore at this point. So to me, again, just a big red flag. Okay, so another tactic is bait and switch. So this is when you are advertised a particular product or service at a specific low price to attract people in, and then they very quickly attempt to sell you something very different and more expensive. Erica, have you been targeted by a company called Temu? I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Temu, Temu.
Yeah, I've seen that come up anytime I search for anything. There's always this site for that. I think they have a lot of panda gear. I think I must search for a lot of things with panda. In fact, I know I search for a lot of panda things. They seem to be like the high market for it, but it does seem like, well, my first take is it's probably cheap junk. I've never clicked on anything because I'm like, where is this taking me? This is definitely some dark web business. What have you found?
I mean, it is a real company, but they are practicing a lot of bait and switch. So they sell a lot beyond panda gear. They sell like a lot of home goods and just organizational products and all sorts of stuff. I've clicked on and engaged with it half the time because I'm curious. They advertise incredibly low price points. But then when you get to it, it's like, well, you have to spin this wheel and you have to buy like 5 things to get that one product at that price, and the other 5 things are much more expensive. It is 100% bait and switch. You're pulled in thinking, oh, I get this like really thin magazine rack for $199. Then I realize it actually costs $17.99, and it takes 2.5 weeks to get here because it's coming from China. And I have to buy like 5 other things. And then it's really confusing because I'm spinning a wheel to get a disc. To me is super, it's a little bit of bait and switch. And then it's a little bit of upselling. It's just a lot of different bad, unscrupulous, and tacky marketing tactics, in my opinion.
It sounds like a mishmash of all the most tacky marketing tactics that you've discussed so far, all rolled up into one website.
Yeah, exactly. They're using like a lot of different things. And again, back to like, you take a more reputable product and brand, and I'm not saying their products aren't okay. I mean, you get what you pay for, but like at some point, I'd rather just go pay like 4 times as much for the one thing I actually need than get convinced. They're also upselling, right? They're convincing me of a bunch of other crap that I don't need. And they're convincing me to like add one more thing to my cart and then I'll get free ship. Just all of these things, which again, those are not dishonest marketing tactics, or you might not even say they're predatory per se, but I do think they're borderline predatory in my opinion, because they're not just straightforward. Like to me, the best marketing is having a great product and selling it in a clean, honest, straightforward way. And I'm very turned off by companies that have to lower themselves to those other tactics.
Pause on that. What you just said of the best marketing strategy is having the clean, and that should be like a Instagram quote. Like that's really like what people should be like, put that in the takeaways.
Yeah. That's a great point. So another one is things with like hidden fees and tons of fine print. Have you ever sat through a timeshare presentation?
No, I've done nothing with timeshares. In fact, I thought that was like something from the 90s that just went away. And maybe it's because it was never something. It's
still around.
Okay, well, now I know.
Yeah. If you go to a resort or something, like particularly like an all-inclusive resort, look, I'm not opposed if you have the time to put into it and you're strong, you sometimes can get something fun for free, like a free massage or something else for sitting through a timeshare presentation, but don't sit through it. unless you know you are incredibly strong and can walk out of there and say no, because you should say no.
Well, that's a good point about all of this stuff. These tactics are aimed at people who maybe have a hard time saying no to things. You have to know your resolve as you're going into these things. If you know that it's like walking into a store of puppies and you go to the puppy store on Saturday and you expect to come out with nothing. Well, that's not my thing. Like, there's no way I'm not coming home with 17 puppies, So if you know your resolve and whether you're strong-willed around these things, like, you feel bad the person put all this time into it. Well, they don't feel bad that they're wasting your time. So you need to use that mentality if you know you're being approached by this thing, you have to go into it knowing you're going to be sold on something you likely don't need, and know that you have the ability to say no. Again, this comes back to having control over your own finances. Take the guilt out of it. Take the emotions out of saying no to something that you don't need to someone who is probably aggressively trying to take your money from you.
Yeah. And Erica, that is a great point. You're 100% right. And to my point about timeshares of like, if you want to sit through it for something free, if you don't have the resolve to know you can walk out of there, don't even put yourself in that situation because it's highly predatory. There are a ton of hidden fees, tons of fine print. They sort of position it one way, but you would have, if you start to break it down, which I've done in those sessions just for fun, you start to poke all the holes and like what's wrong with those programs. And ultimately you'll end up paying way more than the value you will receive from something, even though the entire basis of their pitch is the exact opposite, that you're going to pay all this little money and you get all this benefit from it. It's not little money. Timeshares are expensive, but they claim, you put in 30,000 over some period of time or even 10,000 and you're going to get, 5 times value out of that. And you're going to get vacations at discounts. It's just not true. There's way too much hidden fees, fine print, all sorts of other issues of why timeshares are not good for 99% of people. I'd put multi-level marketing, also known as pyramid schemes, in that same category. And I'll put them in a bunch of categories, but like there's a lot of fine print. They're not telling you the percentage of people who are actually making money. You can go dig deep and research it and find it in some of the disclosures, but they're very unethical in my opinion. And many of them have been brought down over the years also.
You said brought.
And I'd mix in, is that not the right? Brought down? Sorry. Many of them have been brought down over the years also. And then I'd also put like misleading claims in there. Like there is just stuff. And again, the hidden fees, the tons of fine print, misleading claims, it all kind of fits into the same category of just stuff that is not financially good for you. So somebody is proposing that you're getting an amazing deal or that you're going to get rich quick off of something. And it's just not true. And it's predatory in the sense that they are attempting to lure you in to making a confused and uninformed decision through, again, a lot of fine print, a lot of misleading claims, a lot of hidden fees, etc. And they're not being upfront about whether it's truly good for you. And they are incentivized because of what they do, and I'll talk about that more in a second, to sell you these things, right? So it actually is built on the idea that these won't work out for you. So I think about this when I was actually, I'm going to skip the credit card example. So again, we were talking about multi-level marketing, also known as MLMs, timeshares, whole life insurance. Those things are they're not good financial moves for 99.9% of people. Let's say everybody. And the other thing that is an example that's super common lately, and that's a much smaller investment for many people, is there's all these like content producers and influencers out there that are trying to tell you that they, work 2 hours a week and did this method to invest in rental properties or to, invest in the stock market or whatever else. They're working X hours a week and now they make all this crazy money. They're often lying about either how much work they actually put into it, how much money they've made, how replicable that is, right? The market might be saturated. Sometimes it might be a real thing, but the market's heavily saturated in that now. Most of the time, it's not even real. What they're making money off of is some course they've put together and you paying for them to tell you something where most people won't be successful at it. That is the same as a multi-level marketing scheme, because in pyramid schemes, there are people at the top of the scheme making money. Price of Avocado Toast podcast has a lot of really good like expose style podcasts where they break down multi-level marketing schemes. I'll put some links in the show notes to it, because if you're not familiar with them and you want to hear some like real life stories of people who have kind of gone down that path, they've done some great episodes on it.
I did think you were just saying that the price of avocado toast is a marketing scheme, because it sounds
no. Sorry.
Avocado toast construed as
Yeah, no.
upsell.
Yes. No, they're not. The name of their podcast, yeah, is The Price of Avocado Toast. But the idea of like, yes, there are people at the top of those pyramid schemes, very few, making money off of everybody else who's not making money because they're convincing them to buy all these products and try to sell them to friends and family and all this other stuff. It is a pyramid scheme. Many of them are actually breaking various regulations. And again, some of them have been brought down. Many of them are still in operation. They're unethical, predatory, again, not always illegal, unfortunately. Sometimes they are doing things that are illegal and they're not disclosing certain things, which can be illegal. But those are ones that just, gosh, they really frustrate me because they prey on people who are very susceptible and are trying to improve their finances and trying to make good money. But I've frequently said, look, when something seems too good to be true and something seems like a get-rich-quick scheme, it's not legitimate. Like the way you make money is through hard work and doing things a certain way. And there's just it's a big red flag when it seems like something is too good to be true. And then the other thing is, remember that all the people that are selling these things, they are in a level of the scam, right? They were once scammed by someone else and they are now selling and peddling that product. And that's how they're making money, is convincing more people to do what they've now done.
And that's kind of sad because it sounds like it's almost like a cult. You get in and you're trying to convert other people to come in. And then at what point do you get out? So, so that's another thing. If you're intrigued by something, find out what your out is. Read the fine print to know what is my exit strategy here if this truly is something that is purely predatory. There are probably some things out there that are just legitimate, and I'm sure there are. Nothing's coming to mind, but there are things out here. You sign contracts or things. Read the fine print of like, well, do I need 30 days notice before I cancel that? Or am I in this for life?
Yeah. What's the guarantee? What's the, something if you decide to walk away and don't like it? And you'll notice in a lot of things like whole life insurance, MLMs, timeshares, there sometimes is an out, but it's at a large cost to what you already put in. And it doesn't make sense at that point. Right. And I think about like when I say that, remember the person selling you these things is like, they also were scammed at some point. So they often are like believing what they're selling because they're now so ingrained in this and like their own livelihood depends on this. And they're kind of now just, they're indoctrinated in it like a cult. I will say I often feel bad for the people who are peddling these products because they have fallen for that scam, right? And and look, no disrespect, if you have something completely legitimate and you believe it to be true, and like Erica said, there are some things that are legitimate out there, but in the category of whole life insurance, MLMs, and timeshares, they are very few and far between to the average consumer. And that's facts.
Wait, quick question.
As my teenagers would say, facts.
Facts. Quick question.
Facts. Yeah.
Whole life insurance versus term. You mean like whole is a...
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. And when I say whole life insurance, I'm talking about the other type of life insurance that's not term. So when you buy term life insurance, you buy a policy I want a 20-year policy because I want it to cover me until my kids are, on their own. And if something were to happen to me, they're taken care of. A whole life insurance is actually more of an investment product than it is, and it's a terrible investment to be clear, but it's more of an investment product than it is actually an insurance product. And the people, it comes at a very high cost. You're paying for it up front. It's kind of like an annuity, basically. There's a very low return on investment. It's super complex. There's a lot of hidden fees. There's no flexibility. It's hard to get out of. You're not it's hard to get out of vein, right? It's less liquid. Trying to access the cash value of that life insurance policy can be incredibly challenging. And then if you do, you often forego a large amount of the money that you initially put in. That being said, many people who have purchased into whole life insurance policies, it can still be good to get out of it and just put your money into index funds if you can and take the hit. It just kind of depends on like how far into it you are and how much money you can still get out of it. But many of them can be cashed out. It's just at a penalty. And it's not a good investment again. So again, we're kind of working our way up
We're working our way up the pyramid scheme?
The badness. Yeah, we're working our way up the badness meter here. You got stuff like exploitative lending. So, there are people who will offer loans with exorbitant interest rates or terms that trap borrowers into a very bad cycle of debt. got payday loan centers. There's just a bunch of different things that have, crazy high interest rates on loaning money and are fairly exploitative in who they're targeting. And again, hidden fees and not being upfront about, what happens if they aren't able to pay something off. You've got stuff like Ponzi schemes, right? The whole Bernie Madoff thing that many people have heard of. That's where the term bag lady syndrome, I don't know if it originally hailed from that, but somebody who got caught up in the Bernie Madoff Ponzi scheme actually wrote a book called The Bag Lady Papers, and I think kind of coined the term bag lady syndrome, at least as I first heard it.
Yeah, explain the bag lady syndrome.
Bag lady syndrome is like the idea that no matter how well you do, you always are afraid that something could change tomorrow and you become a bag lady. And it actually happened to somebody in the Bernie Madoff scheme. She was, and I think this about myself. I'm like, this person and a lot of people lost money in Bernie Madoff, but this particular person wrote a book called The Bag Lady Papers. Hold on. Her name is Alexandra Penny. She was the editor of a big magazine. She had just done all the stuff right? Had saved her money, had invested well, had invested it with Bernie Madoff, who was I don't know what the term is,
fraud.
Who ran an investment portfolio. Bernie Madoff ran an investment portfolio, and she was invested with him. And turns out he was a fraud. It was a Ponzi scheme, right? It's illegal. It's I think he's in jail now, or he was at some point. I'm actually kind of curious.
Yeah, he was sentenced to 150 years in prison and forced to forfeit $170 billion in 2009.
Wow. And he died in prison at the age of 82 during 2021.
So
wow.
Can we kind of look into, because the Bernie Madoff Ponzi scheme is interesting to me because there were a lot of high profile people who lost significant amounts of money, as well as like just normal everyday people. So how did this get to be so big, and how do we ourselves and others make sure that we don't fall for things? And there are some some basic red flags that we can look for, kind of like what we were talking about with things that are too good to be true, but a guaranteed promise of high returns with little risk. Do you want to go through these red flags?
So it's a great question, Erica. The thing about thinking about a Ponzi scheme is my financial and investment advice for people, which let me preface this with, I am not a financial planner. This is my opinion, and this is Erica's. Erica and I here are sharing our opinion and our personal views here. Take it for what you want. But my personal advice for, again, the average person that is not like Jeff Bezos and, might have a value in having someone professionally manage his money is you don't need a financial planner. You should be buying and investing in basic index funds, which you are doing directly through your brokerage. So you can't get caught up in a Ponzi scheme. The people that were investing with Bernie Madoff were giving their investment person large amounts of money. There wasn't a lot of clear paperwork on what exactly their investment was in. They were trusting him. He was falsifying documents to show them like how their money was doing. It was all fake, right? And so that can be faked through another person managing your money. It can't, well, I don't want to say it can't ever be faked, but like it can't be faked when you're just buying VTI or FCROX through Fidelity or buying something through Vanguard. And so again, if you're focused on what most people should be focused on, which is investing in basic index funds, you can't get caught up in a Ponzi scheme. Does that help?
Yes, that's helpful to know, because it seems like it could happen to anyone because of we're talking about the extent of these predatory tactics.
It's why I don't like financial planners. Any financial planner could do some version of what Bernie Madoff did to people. They could be running a Ponzi scheme, right? They could be taking your money, falsifying documents of exactly where your money is, right? If you don't have direct access to it. And so it's not out of realm that anyone could fall for something like this. I'm just saying if you follow what a lot of people in the investment communities I follow are, which are you invest in basic low-cost index funds, you're not messing around with stuff like this, which again, often is, like you said, promising some really high returns with no risk, which is not true. It's too good to be true. When someone's promising you something too good to be true, it's too good to be true. Move on. Like I wasn't even planning on talking about it, but I would say the same thing on like if some friend or family member is like telling you, oh, if you come invest in this business, you're going to make like, that may not be predatory, but it's not something I would do. Right? It's not, unless you're just trying to donate money to them because you want to help support whatever they're trying to grow. I wouldn't, get caught up in giving them money that you can't afford to lose, because that's just, again, I'm not saying anyone's doing anything dishonest, but it's super risky. Right. And I would personally avoid things like that.
Especially with the promise of you're going to make this off of that. Well, how does anyone know,
Yeah.
How can anyone predetermine that?
Yeah. And I personally wouldn't. I have a friend that I really trust that was telling me about like his brother's thing, and it was like commercial real estate. And I'm like, I trust him. I wouldn't even want to sell someone else on that because like I don't want it to ruin my friendship, right? I don't want to be responsible for like I feel comfortable telling people to go buy index funds because that's just so I don't want to say there's nothing that can go wrong because your money's in the market, but it's like I don't know how to describe it. It's like telling someone to go to Publix and buy milk, right? Like we all do it. It's normal. Not, I don't know. That's
Right.
not a good comparison anyway. You get the idea. Let's move on.
I get the idea. Yeah.
Okay. Buying milk is like buying it.
The last thing I invested in, which was really the best return I could have gotten, was we invested in a local wine shop that was looking to do more of like a localized community-based investing instead of going through banks. And the money we invested was returned in wine credit at the store with a 20% discount. And to me, that was the best investment I've ever made. Probably not for my body, but it helped a local community shop. And there was something I got in return.
And Erica, I think that's awesome. And that was probably a smaller amount of money to you guys.
Yes.
Like hundreds, maybe over 1,000, a couple thousand.
It was in the 1,000 range.
Okay.
We could have done more, but there were enough people who did it that this person got the funding that they needed, keeping the shop open. I'm actually going there tonight with a friend. Yeah, I mean, to me, it was community focused. It didn't feel like a scheme of any sort. There was a business plan put together. It was laid out very well. It was trying to do the small, almost like Kickstarter version of
totally. And that was a small enough amount of money that for you guys that I would imagine you and the landlord discussed that like if it totally went bust, you'd be totally fine. And you know what I mean? And so that's okay, but know that you go into that. There's some risk on that. And they didn't promise you that they were going to like triple your money, right? They were promising you wine, right? Something that they could deliver on. And if they went bankrupt, you're out some wine and like you're going to be okay.
Right. And honestly, it was investing. Yeah, it was investing in my community. I've become friendly with this person. Now it's where I go when I shop for wine. I feel like I should be having this conversation with Liz Gets Loaded instead of you. But, it's a merchant I want in my neighborhood. And I was happy to play a small part in keeping that person there.
Yeah. I like stuff like that. But again, I go into that stuff also saying, be okay that you may never see that money again. But again, still trust. I agree with everything you just said. Okay. So last couple things in terms of types of scams. And then we're going to hit a quick list of how to try to avoid this stuff. Again, these are some of the worst ones. So now we're getting into like phishing emails, phone calls, trying to collect information from you, pretending that they're calling from Amazon or FedEx about a package coming to you. Do you know what a phishing email is, Erica?
Yep, I do. I have the phishing button on my work computer. If I get an email that I don't like, if someone's asking me to do something at work, I just phish it. Is that what you're supposed to do with it? No?
Yeah,
no?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
No, that's exactly. So, I mean, and phishing is where you get an email, and this is phishing, phishing, not the F kind of phishing.
And not the banned fish.
And not the banned fish. But this is where and this happens like on a personal level, and then it's really big in work emails because they're trying to like collect work information and other things. And so the companies are actually really good at training their employees and then sort of like purposely our company, and I'm sure yours does too, Erica, they purposely send out fake phishing emails trying to teach their employees how to catch these because they can be such a big problem if you are susceptible to a real phishing email. But an example of it is where you'll get an email and it'll look like it's from Amazon about something with a package, and it's taking you to Amazon's login page, and it looks like Amazon's login page. Now, if you go look at the browser, it'll have like some different letters or something in it. It might have some letters from Amazon, but it's not Amazon.com. And it will want you to log in. So it's now stolen your Amazon login information. It can access your credit card. It's just a bunch of things. And so it may then ask you to like update your credit card information or connect your bank account to Amazon or something weird. And again, we'll talk about how to avoid this stuff, but like pay attention to where an email comes from. If it looks funny, and I mean, I get like 5 phishing emails a day from like, I'm like, I didn't order something from you.
Well, one thing to keep an eye out for in these emails is if there is an active link for you to click on saying you need to rectify this, here's this link. That link is probably not legit. Don't ever click these links. Do your research before you look at it, because most likely these vendors or companies are not going to send you a link like that.
Yeah. And there's a lot of things you can do to check that. So don't even go to like Google the company's phone number. That can have a whole nother issue, which I'll tell you about in a minute. go to like the Amazon app on your phone and find the customer service number and call Amazon and say, is there a problem with my account? Did something happen? Make sure you have the right number, because last one is actual, and this phishing and phone call scams are in this, but like actual and legit scams, like 100% illegal, hard to catch, hard to enforce, many very sophisticated, trying to get money out of your bank accounts, targeting all ages, much more heavily targeting an older population because statistically they are more susceptible. Let me tell you a quick story, Erica. This is from a friend of mine, and it like freaked me out. I've heard many stories like this, and I'll share a couple stories, but one is, this just happened a couple weeks ago. This is from someone my age. Her mom is 73. Her mom Googled the number for Wayfair customer service because she was trying to get a refund on something she had bought. She didn't get the actual Wayfair, a like fake Wayfair site came up, which eventually Google will shut down sites like this, but there have to be a bunch of reports of fraud. So her mom got pulled into some fake landing page for Wayfair that had a number. She called the number, thought she was speaking to a legit rep because she Googled. It's not like they called her. She called Wayfair. She thought she did. She gave the rep her full credit card number. He somehow got her to download something on her computer that took control of her desktop. Like he said something like, oh, to process this return, I just need to send you an email, click on this thing, it'll download something. Like she was like, okay. Started to do a Zelle connection for the refund. And her spidey sense went up when it got to the Zelle connection. But she'd already downloaded this thing on her computer. They had set all of her Gmail to forward to them, to whoever these fraudsters were. So again, every like financial thing. And they had access to all the files on her desktop. And she had a file on her desktop that was named On Death Read This, that was meant for her daughter and had all of her account information neatly organized in it. They don't even know she doesn't even know if they got access to all that. But the daughter, she immediately, when the Zelle thing happened, she calls her daughter and tells her what she did. And her daughter is like, oh my gosh, this is clearly fraud. Like, gets a hold of her computer. They immediately change all of her passwords, wipe the computer to factory settings. But this person has access to, these people have access to her social security number. I don't yet know like how this all netted out and what they were able to do. And there are a lot of protection agencies and other things that will help you deal with this. But often, sometimes money's like already out of your account and really hard to get back. And so I've also heard about stories where they're actually using AI voice to generate a fake voice. And it sounds like your own family member is calling you and asking you for money for bail money, or that you need cash for something. And I've heard of people, this was someone in my neighborhood, like a next door thread I was reading, and they like gave cash to this thinking that it was to like bail out one of their kids. And had they like immediately hung up and like called their child would have been like, I'm at Publix right now with my kids. Like, I'm fine. And so just like your spidey sense up. Every time I hear these, I'm like always telling my mom the story. I'm like, let me tell you, like things that you can like teach your parents not to click on an email, or even your kid. I think about my kids actually. I've not spent as much time thinking about my teenagers falling for this stuff now, but like you could teach them not to click on an email. But some of the sophistication of these scams lately are very, very sophisticated.
This story of your friend's mom is just insanely sickening. And it might kind of go back to like, if it's not too good to be true, but technology has not advanced that far for some of these things that, you know, someone who's a teenager or in their 70s should be too surprised by these things. And I think sometimes we are a little too trusting, but you do have to trust your gut instinct. If something does feel like, well, this feels a little fishy, like if something feels a little too good to be true, or something feels suspicious, go with your gut instincts, especially if you're talking about something with your money or personal information.
Yeah.
You need to protect that at all costs.
Yeah, totally. And I've heard of so many scams on Facebook Marketplace too. When you're trying to sell something as big as a car, like the scammers really came out when I was trying to sell a car. But even when I'm trying to sell something smaller, you'll get people, and they're real weird. And like, it's like a slow burn scam where they seem interested in the item, but the language is kind of funny. And then they'll ask you for something like, oh, I need to verify your phone, and they're actually doing like 2-factor authentication with your phone number. And they're saying like, hey, I'm going to send you a code. Can you send me the code? That's super sketchy. That is, again, when they tell you, like when someone sends a code to your cell phone, don't ever give it to anyone else unless it's like your spouse and you guys are, trying to get into someone's account, each other's account. Don't ever share it with anyone, especially some random dude on Facebook Marketplace. But you get confused. You're like, oh, okay, you're trying to like, I'm selling something. So I initiated this and you came to me. And there's just some really weird scams where they're like overpaying you and then they pull back the transaction and they want a cash. I can't even describe them because they're so convoluted, but they're confusing and they confuse people. And again, you think like, oh, well, I'm the one that was selling something, so this must be somebody who's interested in it. And there's a lot of scams out there. And we've talked a lot about these, Erica. Let's shift to how we avoid these things, because we can't get into every single thing that is out there. But my number one piece of advice would be just constantly be diligent and focused, right? Remember, and it sucks that we have to be this way, but always be on guard. Always sort of have your spidey sense up and be like, why would someone be asking me for my phone, to authenticate my own phone number? That's weird. Why can't I actually speak to them? And just whatever it is, like, wonder. And I talked about the, like, if it seems too good to be true, it probably is. So just always be thinking, is this legitimate or could this be a scam?
Well, and this goes back to the passage we read at the beginning of this episode about Edward Bernays, Freud's nephew, where he was deliberately trying to manipulate the masses. That's how public relations came about. That's how marketing came about. That is what everybody is trying to do to us, is manipulate us.
Yeah.
Without sounding too like conspiracy theory, like I'm not wearing a tinfoil hat while I say this, but if someone's trying to sell you something, there's a form of manipulation involved, whether it's emotional, financial, they're trying to get something from you. Be aware of what that is and whether you're willing to consent, because we already established that they were engineering consent around this.
Yeah. And again, that's the low end. We talked about like the low end of, you're talking about like engineering consent, trying to get people to buy more stuff, right? Not illegal, not unethical, many would say. And then you get into these other middle categories of things where it's, aggressive sales tactics that start to become truly predatory in nature. And then you get into just the like completely illegal scams, right? And so you gotta watch out for all the different scales of this. And I think that the tactics for how to avoid these things are very different at different levels. And again, at the low end level of what we're talking about, another tactic is shop at companies that you respect that have good policies, good return policies, good guarantees. Like that's an easy way to not get, sucked into something where you're like, man, why did I buy this? It was such a scam, And then, we talked about other like red flags, right? Like get rich quick, too good to be true stuff. I can't say that enough. Super complicated and like too hard for you to understand terms. People asking for your personal information. People asking for passwords, you logging in on a site that looks a little funny, like check the domain name, check where the email came from. If you don't know how to do that, ask a friend for help. But it'll often be look very closely, because it'll often like have the word FedEx in it or Amazon or something else, but it'll be like a few letters off or one letter off, and it'll have like a number after it. So it'll be very close, but a fraudulent scammer domain. People asking you for like large amounts of money before you've ever gotten anything or like understood what's going to happen. I mean, there's all these red flags. Like if something doesn't feel right, trust your gut and don't be afraid to ask questions or just get out of the situation and hang up on someone. Like, you know what I mean? Like if it's legitimate, they'll call you back. Actually, even if it's not legitimate, they'll still call you back. So be careful. Oh, in that story I told about my friend's mom, that person kept calling her back. She eventually at the Zelle point hung up on the guy, realized like, oh my God, this is terrible. I did something bad. Called her daughter. He keeps calling her back, trying to like get her back on the line to like get more information from her and finish all of this. And she just didn't answer. But that was shocking to me that like they kept calling her back.
I know, it's so super creepy
scary.
how persistent people are.
Yeah, totally. So, another thing is like do your own research, right? You can Google this stuff. You can, read unbiased reviews like we talked about, right? Talk to other people, ask for referrals, like especially on like services coming into your home, right? That felt high pressure and weird tactics. Ask other neighbors who they've used, get recommendations from them when someone's been through the process. I often see lots of threads on Nextdoor where people are talking about scams, and there's like a pine straw scam that's super common a certain time of year. And these guys will come by and say, and they're often doing it to older people. They'll say, hey, do you want to buy like pine straw? It's like $10 a bale. And they'll say like, yeah, I want to buy 3 bales. And they'll also put it out in your front yard. Then they'll come back like an hour later and be like, okay, we put out 100 bales. So we need like $300. And she's like, I only wanted 3 bales. And like, well, your yard needed 30. I already put them out. And they're like, sort of they're like, I don't know what the word is, but
yeah, that's hustling. I mean, that's like an upsell to the nth degree, in which case, like, you're not
liable to pay that. But right. When you're standing there and there's a bunch of guys standing on your front stoop and you're like an old lady, you don't feel like you can say it. Like if they did that to me, I'd be like, get the out of here. Like, no way. I mean, I wouldn't say that if I was alone, perhaps, but like,
right.
I mean, you just like it's super
predatory. That is the epitome of predatory.
Yeah, so I'm constantly seeing stuff like that on our Nextdoor group. The other thing is, we talked about this, like, take time to think about it. So if it's a high expense thing, like even when you did that wine thing, I bet you didn't they didn't put you in a room one night with a glass of wine and say like, you must commit now. Like, you probably thought about it and talked to some of your friends and like.
Yeah, it came through a friend. Yeah, it came through a friend. It was a friend of a friend. So even when you say it like that, it sounds it sounds fishy.
MLM-y.
But now the wine owner, the shop owner is my friend. So, not only did I get wine out of it, but I got a friend.
You got a friend. Nice. But just, don't ever feel like you have to commit on the spot. A legitimate business, like that wine business, even as an example, if she was telling people, like, if you don't commit now, like you're, like that would feel fishy. If she was like, oh, let me know, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. We're trying to wrap this up within the next month. And then we're going to figure out our next round of fun, whatever. Like, that sounds very reasonable. And like, again, ask questions. If someone isn't willing to answer your questions and is trying to push you to make a rushed decision, it's not a good sign. You can also go check the Better Business Bureau website for complaints to see if there's already been complaints about a company or something like that you want to work with. Other tips. I know I'm just like rattling stuff off here, but.
Yeah, I mean, so I think one of the big things too, going over this, is reading contracts thoroughly and understanding the terms. And the fine print is fine for a reason, because they want you to think that you're not going to read it. I deal with contracts all day. So I'm like, well, I'm going to read this because I'm going to see what's buried in here. And most of the times it is very straightforward, but you want to know what you're agreeing to. You don't want any surprises, because it's a good question of, if you're not willing to agree to this in the first place and you're not liking the fine print, you don't want to move forward with this. Like, you don't want to get trapped into something that only makes it that much harder and maybe more costly for you when you try to get out of it.
Hey, speaking of that really fast story, I was at the eye doctor with my mom the other day, like very reputable, large hospital in Atlanta. And they were going to put a shot in her eye during that visit, which is like kind of a big deal. And it was like a new office and a new, she was a new patient. So there's like a lot of paperwork to sign. And one of them was like arbitration agreement, which basically said if we have a problem with them and we sue, we agree to go to arbitration versus court or suing or something like that.
Yeah. In arbitration, you're avoiding a sympathetic jury.
Yes, exactly. And so and she was like, it's optional. You don't, and my mom was about to sign it. And the thing is, the form wasn't even in front of her. It was like a keypad to sign. And she was like, and I was kind of joking. I'm like, does anybody like read this stuff? Because you sign so many like forms about like HIPAA and all this stuff when you're a doctor. And I don't read half of them, admittedly, because I feel like I need to see this doctor. And those are not like negotiable terms. I would have to just leave and go see somebody else. And so, but there's a lot of forms that are optional. Like that arbitration form was optional. And I was like, and my mom's like about to sign it. I'm like, Mom, don't sign that. And she was like, I was like, we don't have to sign it, right? And she's like, yeah, no, you don't have to sign it. And she's like, it's an optional form. And I was like, yeah, no, I'm not going to agree. I've never even talked to the doctor yet. I'm not going to sign away my rights to a jury trial before I've even walked in. You know what I mean? Like, why? Yeah. I'm not saying I wouldn't go to arbitration. I'm not saying I'm going to be litigious, but why would I sign away my rights right now? That seems silly.
Yeah. And so that's another good point is, find out if something is optional. You don't have to sign everything that's put in front of you. You don't have to agree to all these things.
Ask questions.
Yeah. Ask questions.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Some like technical things here. Okay. Use strong passwords, right? You cannot, it is much easier to crack passwords that have like normal words in them and like sequential numbers and things like that. You need to use strong passwords, which include like random letters, a mismatch of uppercase and lowercase, random symbols, all mismatched together, and longer passwords. And there's a ton of really cool data that I don't have in front of me that shows how hard it is to break a password that's like my dog Daryl or I love Daryl. I'm not saying that's your password, Erica.
Well, you got it. But you nailed it.
That's much easier to break. Not even someone that like knows you and knows your dog's name, but from a computer to break it because it's real words than it is to break something like I just said. And it takes like minutes versus months or years to break a password, like to crack a password like that. And so there are tools like I love the tool 1Password. It is a paid tool. I've been using it for probably 10 years. It is totally worth the cost. It will protect you heavily to have strong passwords. And then the other thing is lock your credit all the time. We talked about this on various Friends on Fire episodes, but unfreeze it when you need to do something like apply for a loan or something. But there's no reason why all your credit can't be locked at all three bureaus all of the time. I'll put a link in the show notes to how to do that if you don't know. Because like in that example with that person's mom, if she has a lock on her credit, there's only so much damage they can do in terms of like stealing her identity and having her social if her credit is fully locked.
Well, here's a question for you around that too. There's a debate about whether to pay with credit card or debit card on things. And to me, the debit card is scarier because then people have full access to your bank account.
That is a great point. I do not ever have a debit card on me, rarely. And when I do, it's for a specific account where I don't keep that much money in it. And it's like I'm using it when I'm traveling just to be able to go to an ATM. Yeah, I don't use debit cards. It's harder to recoup things. There's a ton of protections on you when you put something on a credit card, or if a credit card gets stolen. Your debit card gets stolen and they get money out of your account immediately. It's gone. And it's very hard to ever get back.
Okay. Well, that's another good point to think about when you're doing online shopping or different other things where you are using a form of payment that anyone could access if you can use a credit card, if you know you're going to pay it off.
Yeah, that's a great point. And a couple last ones. One, turn on two-factor authentication on your phone for like every app possible, especially all your financial apps. You often get prompted for this. Some of it, many of them require it now. Many apps like give you an option, like on Venmo, you got to go turn it on, but you want that on an app like Venmo. Because another scam, you ever heard this scam, Erica? Somebody asked to like, first off, you might hand your phone to a stranger to take a picture or something, or they ask like, oh, can they just borrow your phone to make a phone call real quick? And you're like, oh yeah, I'm standing right here. They open Venmo on your phone. Within seconds, they can transfer themselves tons of money directly out of your bank account, and you can't get it back.
I am setting my phone to two-factor authentication now.
Yeah, you have to do it in each individual app. So in Venmo, you can go into the settings and turn on two-factor authentication, which means it's a little bit more of a hassle. Sometimes when you log in, they're going to send you the 6-digit code via your text message, and then you've got to enter it to get in. It's worth the hassle because it's protecting you. So I know it seems annoying, but it's highly important. My last piece of advice, we've talked about this a couple of times, but like warn and remind your parents, your teenagers, your kids, depending on how old they are. Like I said, I'm constantly like, when I hear these crazy stories, I'm telling my mom about them so that she has a sense of like the depth and breadth of the weirdness of some of these scams. And I'm like, if you're ever unsure, just call me. She'll call me all the time. She'll email me and be like, oh, I got that. I'm like, oh, that's totally legit. Like you can do that. But just like when in doubt, ask somebody else, right? Like warn your friends and family about this stuff, especially parents and kids that you are responsible for. And don't be afraid to ask someone if something looks funny. Speaking of phishing, or when we were talking about phishing emails, Erica, I remember at work, every time like they'd send like a fake phishing email, we frequently be like, especially back when we were in the office together, we'd be like, hey, did you get that email? Like I got a funny email today. Like we'd start like sharing info about, and it's helpful. Like ask somebody if something looks fishy.
And if it does look fishy, don't be embarrassed if you've gotten as far as like providing some information like your friend's mom did. Don't be embarrassed to still reach out. I think sometimes people are like, I can't believe I fell for this, and there's some shame associated with it, but it's better to admit it and recognize it earlier on and ask for the help to like confirm that maybe this isn't legit, instead of being like, well, no, it's silly that I'm thinking this is not real. And then you go all the way down to, being taken for everything.
Yeah, totally. And I said that was the last one, but the last one I forgot about is, like Erica said, you might be embarrassed, but if something happens to you or you catch something, report it. And there's a bunch of places you can report it at. I'm going to put a link in the show notes to some of those locations. Like you can make a report to the FTC. If there's something in terms of like mail fraud happening, you can report it to the U.S. Postal Inspection Service. You can make reports to the Better Business Bureau. You can make reports to the National Consumers League, Scam Watch. There's a ton of different organizations around the world. But do some research, and in some cases, you can make a report to the police. So like that thing that happened to her 73-year-old mom, like that should be reported to the police. And you often, for identity theft stuff, you need a police case file anyways. But you should report this because it does help to stop some of these things and it makes other people aware of them so that fewer people end up falling for the same things that we might have fallen for. So don't feel, I mean, yes, you might feel embarrassed, but like channel that into helping others and share it on your local next door platform so other people in your neighborhood like don't fall for the pine straw scam or whatever it might be. But I just would say, like tell other people about it and report it formally or share it in your community so that it helps other people. I think that's something good you can do from something bad that happened to you.
Yeah, that's probably the best one to end on.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, that was a lot of me talking also this episode, Erica.
That's okay. Well, that was a lot of really, really good, helpful information, Maggie. I mean, even for me, a lot of these tactics, like I'm not aware of, and I don't know if it's because I'm not targeted or I just don't pay attention or I just turn it off and try to go the approach of like, well, this sounds a little too good to be true. I mean, really, I just don't like being sold on things. I don't like being solicited to.
Yeah.
You know, for me, it's a lot of that. But this is really helpful because there are more things as technology evolves and starts ruling our lives. There are more predatory things that are going to become available that it only takes one person to figure out what those are and share it with others before it's now commonplace. So we just always have to be aware, protect ourselves, protect our finances, protect each other.
Yeah, very true. Well, we appreciate you guys listening. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. And as Erica was saying, I hope this was helpful to people. If you ever want to leave us a written review on Apple Podcast, we always greatly appreciate it. You can also leave us a rating on Spotify.
Yep. And also definitely share this episode with friends or family members so they can learn, you know, how to protect themselves and be aware of these tactics. You know, the more people who are aware, the more that they're hopefully nipped in the bud before they become any sort of financial hardship.
Yeah, just like we talk about like normalizing talking about money and stuff. Like the more we learn about how to improve our finances, the better we are. The more we learn about all the crazy tactics that are out there, the more we're not going to fall for them.
Right. And so you can subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you have thoughts or questions, we'd definitely love to hear from you. You can leave a voicemail or text us at 404-981-3370 or hit us up on Instagram.
Okay, thanks, Erica.
Thanks, Maggie.
Bye.
Bye.